Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for S.H.Figuarts Zenkaizer from Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger. This feels really nostalgic in a way. It's my first Sentai Figuart review in a while, at least a new one. I've been revisiting some of the older ones, but this is our first Sentai Figuart release in quite some time. The most recent one before this was actually the weird US exclusive ones that had Jason and Tommy heads like 4 or 5 years ago. It's also my first Figuart review in a while, as I've kind of stopped collecting them, because even though they're nice figures, I really feel they haven't warranted the price in a while. I feel that they felt kind of cheap even for the price, and I've been kind of apprehensive about them. But being a Sentai fan, I was excited to see the return of these. I'm sorry this review took so long. I actually missed the pre-order for this guy and had a hard time finding one at a price that I liked, but now I'm finally bringing you the review, and we'll talk about whether I think it's a triumphant return for Sentai Figuarts or not. So let's start, as usual, with accessories. So obviously, you do have the changer here as far as accessories go, and that's one thing Sentai Figuarts and Figuarts in general have always done really well with, is the accessories are always really well detailed. Like, they have like every little nook and cranny. I mean, if you wanted to get nitpicky, there's probably someone that's upset that this isn't translucent like it is in the show, but for the most part, it's very well detailed. It's in scale, at least in scale enough for me. I think they did a good job on it. You can't open that little flap or anything. Sometimes older Sentai figures would have like the gimmick of the Ranger keys, like the Gokaigers, but this doesn't come with little gears or anything, which I'm actually fine with, because I always found that to be like, hey, this is neat, but I'm totally going to lose this in 5 seconds. You can crank this little thing here, though, so whee! Anyway, that was weird. It comes with a variety of different hands. You have like its Showtime hands. On him, I kind of have just the gripping the weapons hand. You got some sort of general relaxed hands. The classic Figuarts fist that they all come with, some karate chop, you just got slapped hands. He doesn't really come with anything else, but honestly there's not a whole lot missing that he could have come with. I mean, I suppose he could have come with the giant cannon from the end of the show, but it's not really a deal breaker. You know, there's some figures that are really under-accessorized, and he pretty much just comes with exactly what you'd expect. And overall, I have to say, I'm really pleased with this figure. Like, one of my common complaints about Sentai Figuarts in retrospect is honestly they were too skinny. I think that Sentai Figuarts really got romanticized. When they were extinct, Sentai Figuarts were romanticized, deified. But if you look back, their legacy is failure. No, but like honestly, like they were nice figures that were very well detailed, but their molds were so overly skinny. Like, I know that the Japanese suits are often skinnier than like the US suits or the US figures, but even with these ones, they were just way too skinny for even like something like Deca Blue, that's usually a more bulkier guy. Even in the Japanese footage, he was way too skinny, and that would, I think, mostly bother me when it came to the helmets, is it would make the helmets way too skinny. And here in just a minute, I am going to show a comparison to like a Gokai Red figure, just so you can see the mold, and I think they did a good job on this one, because when you look at Zenkaiser's suit in the show, he is a little bit of a bulkier guy. In terms of like the helmet's a much more rounded helmet, you have the armor here, and I think they did a really good job on the proportions. It's not perfect. If I could get nitpicky, I'd say that this feels a little bit off, and you don't have as much of a neck going on here, but that's getting like really nitpicky. Like, I'm trying to find something to complain about. Like, overall, I think they did a good job on the head sculpt. It's much more of a rounded helmet. I think they represented that well. The compound blue eye looks really nice. It contrasts nicely. The gold paint looks good here. I would obviously be careful about these breaking. You know, I've had Figuarts like this in the past where they've fallen on the floor, even onto carpet, and broken. I think they did a good job on the proportions for the chest armor here, and even right here, like, it's not just the chest armor being wide. Like, you have the actual bodies a little bit bulkier, a little bit more naturally proportioned, you can see in the stomach, and even in the legs. Like, he's got a little bit thicker thighs. That's weird to talk about, but it much more accurately represents the way the body proportions look in the show. And this makes sense because they have made improvements to Figuarts, and we've been getting the renewal versions, even for Rider, that have had much more accurate proportions, to the point where, like, back in the day, you're like, oh man, this Kabuto Figuart looks really good. And then they came out with the renewal version, and you're like, wow, how did I ever think the original one looked good? And I think that they've really taken the improvements in proportions that they've made with Figuarts and added it to this, which works really well. And I think Zenkaiser is a good example for that, because he has bulkier proportions. And I think the paint all looks really nice. You know, you have all the classic details. It all shines really nice where it needs to. The cape back here is kind of a rubbery material, which I actually kind of like this. You can go a couple different ways with this. Obviously, you have the way they went. You could also go with a cloth, or you could go with just a straight up hard piece. And I like the way they went with this, because it kind of makes it flexible, and it gives it kind of a realistic flowy feel, and it also feels like it does in the show. This part here is a hard piece, though. There is a little bit of a discrepancy, though, there, but that's not a huge deal. Like, I think it actually flows pretty nicely overall, and I think just look-wise, it's very nicely done. I'm very happy with it. It makes me excited for the future of Sentai Figuarts, because, like, looking back, There are some Figuarts from the old collection that hold up, but for the most part, in my opinion, they just don't hold up, and I'm glad that we've learned lessons from this, and it makes me excited for Don Momotaro and any future releases. And I feel like, as of this recording, maybe it'll be announced, but like a Zenkaiser Black has to be around the corner. That's just such an easy one to do now. If you're not familiar, Sentai Figuarts are very well articulated. You have a nice ball joint right here, all around 360 movement. You got swiveling, double elbow joints. You got a nice ball joint at the fist here, nice ball joint at the leg, nice little hinge right here, swiveling, double knee joint. You have a nice little ball joint at the foot. You got ankle articulation. You have chest and waist articulation. You have 360 head articulation, although it is a little bit hindered by his cape here, so you can't fully do it. But like, it's possible. It's not like it just stops there. It's hindered by an actual physical thing. But Figuarts are basically some of the best articulated figures that's never been in question, even as I've, fallen out of Figuarts. They're like, if you're like looking for a sort of scale, I guess, there's like basic PR action figures, Lightning Collection, and then this is Figuarts in terms of like articulation. So you're going to get the absolute most articulation out of it. And thankfully, no loose joint problems with this. It all feels very solid. Something I have talked about with Figuarts as they've gone on is they have gotten a bit of a cheaper feeling. And this doesn't feel as high a quality in my hands as some of the other figures I've gotten in the past, but it does not feel cheap. It feels very solid. And I think for the most part, honestly, feels worth the money. That's been kind of my common complaint about Figuarts, even as they've gotten better, is that even when I'm like, yeah, this is a good looking figure, but it's really not worth the price I spent on it, and will often feel very cheap, which just doesn't correspond, again, to the amount of money I spent on it. And with this, I mean, I feel like it could feel a little bit more higher quality if I was feeling really nitpicky, but for the most part, having purchased this, I feel satisfied with the money I spent and how it looks. Just to do some comparisons here to round out the review, here it is next to our basic Zenkaizer figure, which you can see, as you can see, obviously, this is a superior pick. No, but, these ones actually aren't bad. There's some figures in this class that I think are better. Like, I think the Dawn Brothers ones look better, whereas the Zenkaiser ones for this look cheaper. But this is kind of more of a, hey, I'm impatient and I don't want a vinyl figure of choice. So if you're trying to decide between a Zenkaiser figure and you want to spend a little bit more, this one here is clearly the better pick. But just for a comparison here, I just have, obviously this isn't the same suit, but just comparing it, you can see to the old Gokai Red figure, you can see how overly skinny the mold is, and especially when the helmet, again, it comes down to the helmets. Like, I know the Japanese molds are skinnier, but I think all of them across the board, in my opinion, were too skinny back in the day. And it really, again, it extends to the helmet here, where it makes the helmets skinny, and it's especially noticeable on helmets like Zenkaizers. Like, Zenkaizer is a more well-rounded helmet. You will have variety in the Sentai helmets. Some of them will be well-rounded, some of them will be a little bit more slender. But when you get the Figuarts shoving it into a slender mold, it makes the helmets look really too small and too slender, and I'm glad that they fixed that. So obviously, again, this isn't the same thing, but you can really see the improvement in the quality and the proportions that have been made. So overall, I'm very happy with this purchase. I'm actually really excited now for whatever Sentai Figuarts they roll out in the future. Don Momotaro is the only one that's been announced as of this recording, but there's likely more in the pipeline. Whatever we get, though, I'm happy to have them back because they are overall really nice figures. And if you are a Zenkaizer fan of the suit, whatever, if you can find this at a price close to the retail price, I can definitely recommend it for your collection. For me, it was worth the price, and I wouldn't say I was like absolutely blown away, but it was a very satisfying return to the Sentai Figuarts, and the improvements showed for me. But that's about it for this one, though, guys. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.